Hello everyone, this is the Truth Seeker, responding again to, actually this time this is just a response to ReligionThink. This is in regard to the Deist challenge, and he was a little worried about me. He felt that I was getting a little too passionate, that maybe I was a little too upset about being confined within the walls of religion. Yeah, I do get passionate, but you know what? Honestly, Wayman, if we were, sitting in the backyard, I'd kick it with you with a beer, and you're a good guy, and we would have our little talks together, and I wouldn't think much of it after that. Of course, I do have to have answers for myself, and so yes, I do get passionate about what I believe is true, just the same as anybody else would get passionate about what they believe is true. So, moving on, well, there's this idea that you're putting forth that if the documentary hypothesis is untrue, well, your world is not going to come crashing down. But in my case, well, I guess there's an assumption that my world would come crashing down. Well, no, that's not the case. I'm of the mindset that if there are certain things about the documentary hypothesis that are true, my world is not going to come completely crashing down. My theology is not going to fall apart with one or two beams being removed from the structure. Specifically in regard to the messiahship of Jesus, because I do believe that this is where it really comes down to is certain individuals have used the documentary hypothesis and formed criticism to build arguments that Jesus was not the Messiah. I am of the opinion that if he was not the Messiah, if it can be proved that he was not the Messiah, and convince me, because up to this point in my life, I have not yet been convinced. Would I be upset about that? No. I wouldn't be upset because it would be the truth. And I would still have my belief in God. And so, no, my world would not come crashing down. However, I have to have good reasons for believing that Christ was not the Messiah. Now, in your video, you discussed the different sources of the documentary theory, and you go into great detail, and you're like, toward the end of the video, you're like, I really wish someone would prove to me that this documentary theory is incorrect so that I can believe how I should approach the Bible, approach the biblical texts, which makes total sense because the documentary theory, there's so much of it that the scholars are kowtowing toward it, to support it, because it's simply falling apart at the seams. But getting into the antiquity of the P source, I could focus on the other sources here, but for those of you that are interested, you can watch my third video. I'll put the link in the description on my response to who wrote the Bible. And I get into the names of God. I talk about centralization of worship. And that's really what this piece, or, well, actually, no, that's the Deuteronomistic. See, even I have trouble saying it. So the fact that religious apologists do not look at the archaeology, I would have to say, no, that's not true. I do look at the archaeology, and so But the question would be is, how are you looking at the archaeology? Are you looking at it as from a naturalistic worldview? Are we looking at it through the lens of the documentary hypotheses? Are we interpreting our facts based on the four sources? Or are we allowing ourselves to simply look at the data as it is and maybe consider possibly that there were not four sources? So in regard to the priestly text, there is a reference, archaeological reference. This is from the book, A Survey of the Old Testament Introduction by Gleason Archer Jr. And on page 149 and 150, he writes, the Ras Shamra tablets from 1400 BCE, which contain a large amount of the Ugaritic literature, render the Wellhausen post-exilic concept void. Many of the technical sacrificial terms of Leviticus were discovered in far-removed Canaanite-speaking Ugaritic, 1400 BCE. Such P-source terms as ishsheh, which means offering made by fire, kalil, which is whole burnt offering, shelamin, which is peace offering, and asham, which is guilt offering. Archer is correct in concluding that these terms were already current in Palestine at the time of Moses and the conquest, and that the whole line of reasoning which made out the terminology of the Levitical cultus to be of late is devoid of foundation. So, there is archaeological evidence that would contradict the idea that the P source is post-exilic, but in fact, it could be dated it could very logically be dated to the time of Moses. So that's just one. We can get into more. I don't want to make this a big long video. But it's going to be another drink of beer. So basically, we have this idea of the different sources, and I still cannot mentally assent to this documentary theory because of reasons like I just shared. And in regard to this idea that I don't know what you believe about it, because so many people believe so many little different things about the documentary theory, and not all of them believe the same thing. But, many believe that the temple, the tabernacle, is nothing but pure fantasy in the book of Exodus, that it was just a creation of the priestly source, after the exile, which to me is just ridiculous. So I don't know if that's what you believe, but a lot of the documentary theorists would state this, and this having to do with the centralization of worship, and there seems to be this unspoken claim that the agnostic or the deist position is somehow a more correct view, because these ideas are more, quote, free from religious hindrances. And I've already pointed out that we are all bound by our ideas. So, no, I do not feel that my thoughts are hindered by my religious views. There are many religious views that I have let go of over the years. And in regard to your quote from Gordon Cyrus on the Ugarit and Minoan Crete, which is interesting because he talks about doublets, repetitions, and how these were used in the Ugarit, and how this is, showing that supposed double creation accounts or other stories. These are actually styles of writing, that is present in the Ugaritic, and it lends support, to this idea that no, these are not repetitions, or these are not double stories in the creation account. And so therein blows another leg out from underneath the documentary theory. One aspect of the theory that a lot of people continue to push forward, and but we could speculate that it's faulty based on the study here from this book by Gordon Cyrus. How is it that you are interpreting the peace source? I know that most of the documentarians are looking at the peace source as being dated to around 450 BCE. Post-exilic. This is just, to me, mind-baffling, how you could date these texts so early. I've got some links over here on the side on the antiquity of the Hebrew and the antiquity of the Torah, if anyone's interested in looking at that. Anyway, we get into this book, who wrote the Bible, and you have this idea about the Hebrew language and looking at the different epochs of the where each word came into use, and really this, a lot of this, I wish you were more specific on, because we really have to deal with each thing, one little thing at a time, because we can say a lot of general statements about things, and I can just say a lot of general things as well. So in regard to terminology, we have first of all, we have the concept of Horeb. The word Horeb versus the word Sinai. And you said, basically you said there's no exceptions to this distinction. You were referring to the use of the word. Now, there's a book called Dating the Old Testament by Craig Davis on page 43, Sinai, Horeb. Sinai and Horeb are two different names for the mountain where God gave the law to Moses. The documentary hypothesis suggests that Horeb is used by E and D, while Sinai is used by J and P. Sinai is used in the Torah 30 times, 13 times in Exodus, 4 in Leviticus, 12 in Numbers, and 1 in Deuteronomy. Horeb used 12 times in the Torah, 3 times in Exodus, and 9 times in Deuteronomy. Both names are mentioned in the prophets and in the writings. Several problems with the theory are apparent. First, the documentary hypothesis again has to make small cuts in the narrative to pull Horeb into the E source in Exodus 17:6 and 33 verse 6. The cuts in the narrative in Exodus 17 leave the J source with the people thirsting for water but not getting any. Second, the cut in Exodus chapter 33 verse 6 serves no purpose but to pull Horeb into the E source. Then the E account is left dangling all the way until Numbers chapter 10. Third, Sinai is used in Deuteronomy chapter 33 verse 2, a passage source critics do not assign to the J source or the P source. Okay, so there is no agreement on the modern geographical location of Mount Sinai Horeb. Though many suggestions have been made, it has been suggested that Horeb and Sinai are separate peaks, that Horeb is a peak in the Sinai range and that Sinai is a peak in the Horeb range. A detailed study of the topic is beyond the scope of the book. We can note that the words are used differently. When Sinai is used, the Torah says Mount Sinai or Wilderness of Sinai 28 out of 30 times. The exceptions are Exodus 16:1, which has other geographical references Deuteronomy 33 verse 2, which is part of a song. When Horeb is used, it stands alone 11 out of the 12 times. Only in Exodus 33:6 does it say Mount Horeb. And the term wilderness of Horeb does not appear. Okay, that's significant. Anyway, moving on to this concept of, there's this phrase, the place where Yahweh sets his name. And, you know, you're saying that this is never in the J source, it's never in the E source, it's never in the P source. But what this is actually referring to is a centralization of worship. It's a Deuteronomic reference. And then we have a book that is called the Book of the Law. It is written by the Reverend G.T. Manley. It's in a PDF file. If you put in 63 on the PDF, it'll take you to page 127, and you'll see the area there on the tabernacle and the temple. And it says that the tabernacle was erected at Shiloh. There was a whole congregation assembled. This is in Joshua. Thither also Echaniah went up from the year to year to worship and to sacrifice. 1 Samuel. And there Samuel received his call to be a prophet. Jeremiah spoke of Shiloh as the place where Yahweh set his name at the first. Was he not right? Is not the tabernacle envisioned in Deuteronomy as more particular the place where Yahweh put his name? The tabernacle was superseded by Solomon's temple. And if there ever was a day when worship might be said to have been centralized in Jerusalem, it was the day of its dedication. Then all Israel gathered to celebrate an act of national significance. From that time forward, the temple was recognized as the seat of Yahweh's worship. You know, again, we're talking about Solomon, talking about King David, we're talking about you know, the 10th century BCE here. This goes on to deal with the concept of local sanctuaries. Again, I deal with this in my video, my third video on the response to who wrote the Bible in regard to centralization of worship. And you know, this is a documentarian theory, and you know that the Deuteronomist. Why the Deuteronomist is the one who's concerned with centralization of worship. How do they know this? Well, it's simply a judgment upon the text. And many of this, you know, categorizing of Horeb, Sinai, well, it's just all based on a judgment, you know, a speculation. So anyway, we could move on, but you know, you listed some other ones there with all your heart, you know, with all your soul. I could get into that. I could put more sources up, but let's just move on. And so anyway, regarding the pagan influences in the literature, you're talking about words. You're talking about Hebrew words, or you know, from the Canaanite, you know, terms for death, word of the god of the sea, Yom. Hebrew word for sea, Shemesh, sun, Babylonian, Canaanite hymns transferred to Yahweh in the Psalms. Now, regarding those words, you know, for death, you know, for the sea, for Shemesh, you know, to me that's insignificant because, for one thing, we have many words in the English language that are from other languages, and you know. There's no difference in the Hebrew culture that they would have words, that they would have words from other cultures, or that other cultures would borrow words from them. This, to me, does not show a real influence of paganism within the Hebrew concept. No, a real influence would be, you know, that their God was a polytheistic God, you know, and then, you know, of course, I know you're very hip on the Elohim, and you know, I don't want to get into that argument on this video, but suffice it to say, I don't buy it. I don't